This is part 9 of our series of reminiscences about great events in history. And today I want to talk about the collapse of the Soviet Union. This basically took place between the years 1989 and 1991. My wife and I had visited the Soviet Union for 3 weeks back in 1984. And we could see, once we got inside the country, how shabby things were and how struggling the whole country was. And our thought was this was a third world country that just happened to have a first-rate military presence. And it was that facade of military strength and equity with the United States that made the Soviet Union feared around the world. But even in 1984, we knew that this was just a facade. We traveled all over the country and saw the privation that the people had to go through as the government of the Soviets struggled to keep up with their military spending, to keep up with the United States and the West. So it was a real eye-opening trip. Then I'd like to mention the Berlin Wall, which I had seen in 1975. I was a 24-year-old college student, just graduated from college. I went with a college age group tour for 8 weeks called Europa House. And my friend Rick McKay was with me on that particular trip. And we went all through Europe, and when we got into Berlin, we got to see the Berlin Wall. And the contrast between the two sides was amazing. The eastern side, the communist side, was very gray and drab and deserted, whereas the western side was very prosperous, very colorful, very westernized, and you could see why people wanted to escape both East Berlin and East Germany and get to the west. To prevent this, they had the Berlin Wall, which was built, I believe, back in 1961. And we got to climb up on an observation platform overlooking the wall. And we could see the East German guards in their machine gun towers. We could see other guards walking through the no man's land between the two sections of the wall, which had minefields in them, steel girders which acted as anti-vehicle traps, electric barbed wire fences, and of course the wall itself, which was very high and would be very difficult even if you made it to climb it. So it was a very shocking, eye-opening type of thing for young people like myself to see. Now, the wall itself was taken down in 1989 to the great joy of the German people. And this was televised live around the world. And this was the first big step in the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Shortly after that, one province after another started to try to break away. And we had the leaders Mikhail Gorbachev and Boris Yeltsin trying to keep things going while also introducing reforms. But at this point, it was just too late. So one at a time, each of the provinces started to break away, and the Soviet Union just gave up trying to keep them together. So the fall of the Berlin Wall was a very important thing. In 1990, my two friends, Joe Masonic and Rick McKay, and I went to Eastern Europe. And when we got to Berlin, the wall was almost completely torn down at that point. And we saw big chunks of rubble of the wall. And so I picked up one of those pieces, and I have it at home here now on my mantelpiece. We traveled all through these former Soviet satellite countries of Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and East Germany. And the thing that impressed us the most was how dilapidated these countries were under the communist yoke which basically started right after World War II, around 1945, and the Soviets claimed all of these countries under the pretext of having a defensive line on their eastern border from Western Europe attacking them. But this was just a naked power grab, really, on their part. But the prices of these different countries of commodities for lodging and food and things like that were so inexpensive. We were just stunned. For example, when we were in Poland, we were in Krakow, and we went into a restaurant, and we got the most expensive thing on the menu. Everything from, like a 5-course meal, and it cost us equivalent of about $5 in United States money. Of course, years not too far afterward, a few years later, prices caught up with the rest of the West as the former Eastern Bloc could see that they could charge their prices, increase them by 4- and 5-fold, and that no one would even notice or even complain. So we just happened to get in there and see everything just as it was going from the transition from communism to capitalism. And I'm really glad that we went on that trip, and we learned a lot on that trip. So those are my reminiscences of the collapse of the Soviet Union.